So joining me is Ismail Gani, known as Isitronics, who used to be a mainstay on our show. And I'm so glad that I ran into you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, brother. It's nice to meet you in person. I met you at the Palestinian March recently.
It's crazy because we've been speaking for years at this point, and we've never actually interacted in person.
Correct.
And I don't know, that day when you saw me, you just came up to me and knew who I was exactly.
That's because I saw a bit of your lives and stuff.
On my TikToks.
Your TikToks, and I think on Facebook as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm not particularly on TikTok, but you can cross-platform as well.
I do. So I share, like, if I upload something, I'll just upload it everywhere, like at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's basically the right way to do things.
But look, I mean, I love these nostalgia segments with you. I remember we've had some really memorable ones. We spoke about Lego, and I mean, I feel like Barbie even at some point.
Dude, we didn't go on to Barbie because firstly, we've done Legos. We've done Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels. And Matchbox. Those were the two most popular die-cast toys.
I feel like we've done a show on Nintendo as well.
Yes, Nintendo Game Boy.
Yeah, it was so much fun. But look, let's get right into this, right? So the 90s were like a turning point for South Africa with the end of apartheid in 94, right?
Correct.
So I'm born in 88. So the thing is, I'm like, why did I say that on last? In any case, so this moment shaped the decade culturally and politically, don't you think?
Correct. The end of the apartheid. I can remember where I was in that stage, 1994. I think we were at my uncle's place in Isipingo, and I was watching the elections take place. It was just 4 years before I could vote. Oh. So I was 14 at the time. Yeah, so
you just gave away your age.
Well, I don't mind. I think I've done it a few times as well. So, yeah, I was watching the lines, and those days we had such a hopeful outlook on South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody stood in line for hours on end. There were no issues, and the main thing between South Africa and the rest of the world, with going through such a big change from my view of it, is that we went through it without a civil war. Most of the other countries that I've seen across the rest of the world, when they go through such a big change, there's always a civil war. But we managed to go through it relatively peacefully.
I mean, I'm going to push back. I feel like there was a reason for that. I feel like the white monopoly capital in this country were really smart. And what they did is they got Oliver Tambo and Nelson Mandela to agree beforehand. I think that was the reason for the success of South Africa moving over. You must also remember at that time, the world was not having it with apartheid South Africa.
Correct.
We were being sanctioned heavily. The currency was fledgling. It was like slowly starting to...
It was slowly to decline, yeah.
And the only people who were actually supporting us is the US, the Giles of the world. And I think white monopoly capital realized, listen, we need to make a change. So let's change the color of the faces on the front of the billboards, but let's still keep all the power in the back end, and I think that's what they've done really effectively.
Just basically moving to the shadows.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, working in the shadows is so much more effective. If you look at it now, and this is not, I'm not saying this from a place that is racist. I think 80% of this country is still run by white monopoly capital.
Well, talking about working from the shadows, that we can reference that back to the topic, which is the 90s.
Yeah.
That would be the smoking man from the X-Files.
I mean, I don't... You're gonna have to like bring me up to speed.
In the X-Files, there was always this character working the back end, controlling things. He was simply known as a smoking man because he always had a cigar or a cigarette in his hands, and he was always controlling things. And Fox and Scully just couldn't figure out who he was.
Sure. And did we ever get an answer by the end of the series?
I highly doubt it. I can't remember exactly.
We must
I highly doubt it. But I've got my little one into X-Files as well. He really likes it. No, I make sure he watches all the classics.
Right.
He has to watch all, because there's so many movies from today that still reference the older movies.
And I feel like there was just a level of the insights were somewhat more intelligent and less garbage as what we get today.
And those movies, we didn't have those major blockbusters like how we have today.
But consider in the Matrix came out in 1999, right?
Yes. I think
I've watched the Matrix like 3,000 times. It is just that good.
It's a brilliant, because of that the bullet time where they did that shot,
and yet
that was unique.
That angle, there's an African American director who created the shot before the Wachowski brothers used it in 1999.
The DOP.
But I mean, I think like in everything else, and I'm gonna say it, I feel like everything is stolen from blacks. They just are superior to us in every sense of the word. It's scientifically been proven in their melanin. And I think the reason why the whole world actually tries to hold the black man down is because that if we gave them chance to flourish, they would just blow us away.
Well, Africa is one of the richest continents. It's just that you don't have control over the riches that the continent has.
And that's the problem, because we put people in power who are absolute sellers. But I mean, I feel like we're pushing a very political line here.
Narrative at the moment,
Look,
yeah.
I know this. We are an Islamic radio station, and I'm not by any means promoting music, but like it's important to talk about how like Kwaito became huge in the 90s, right? So I think specifically from the angle of it was a cultural revolution in a sense that the black man was given a voice and a way to
Correct.
express themselves, and they did it through this music, which became huge. I mean, Kwaito is no longer, I wouldn't say it's the dominant genre in the country. I would say Amapiano is, but that's
Yeah.
gone over the world. But I feel like it's an iteration of Kwaito.
I think that's in those days the group was TKZ, if I'm not mistaken. They
Yeah, I
were
mean-
one of our biggest local groups.
I'm such a coconut.
So-
You're asking the wrong guy.
That, to my knowledge, was the biggest group in those days, and they came out with quite a big hit. So yeah,
And many quite big hits. But like, I mean, look, touching on another point that is super relevant. It was the 1995 Rugby World Cup, right? So this is etched in our collective
Yes,
memory,
yes,
especially
yes,
with
that's
Nelson
correct.
Mandela and the Springbok jersey. I was a few years old here at this point, and I still remember it. It was Francois Pina, no?
yes,
He was the
Mr.
captain. I mean, Francois Pina, that face, you couldn't miss that. That face was everywhere, all over Lays, all over our TVs. Back then, we were watching TV, watching the adverts and everything. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, talk about the impact that this had on our national unity.
Well, that's where our Tata comes in. Those brilliant structures that he used sports to unify the country as well. And he wanted the South African team to actually win it. And we went all the way and we did.
And we won. I mean, I think we the highest ranking rugby
Well, we're one of the best
in the world, right?
in the
I think we
world.
won the
We've
most.
always
Or
been
are we
good
tied
at
with New Zealand,
sports.
Ted? We won more than New Zealand, because I mean, I feel like New Zealanders would argue that point. Okay.
Well, in those days, if I remember correctly, there was the great rivalry was Jonah Lomu and
Jonah
James
Lomu,
Small.
oh.
Those two guys, dude,
I've been obsessed with the haka since then.
I remember that tackle that Lomo did. He just ran through, I don't know who they were playing, but he just ran through the fields like it was butter. The guy was just falling away and he was bulldozing this guy.
Yeah.
And he just went through it. And everybody was like, what is wrong with this guy? How can he do things like that?
Yeah.
And then
Rugby's
we
a
had
brutal
our
sport,
man there,
yeah.
but on the smaller side because his
I mean,
name,
Chester Williams was fairly small, right? I mean, Chester Williams was a
Chester
big
was
deal back then,
also another good guy.
but he was
so-
smaller, much smaller.
He wasn't as big as Lomo. I think there was Lomo was big, and then Chester Williams, and then James Small in terms of physical size,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly.
So okay, still on the 90s. While the 90s saw great strides, there were also some serious issues like the challenges with the rise in the rates of HIV and AIDS, which was an epidemic, and these issues affected just optimism of the post-apartheid years. And a lot of conspiracy theorists like me would say like, now that the white man is out of power, he's just trying to kill all the black men with his AIDS. But that's how it felt at that time.
Well, it's basically what was happening in the country. I mean, people weren't adhering to old cultural values of waiting till marriage. So I think that's also contributed towards the spread of the AIDS epidemic. But I think we've done pretty well since then
And I mean, look,
as a country.
to touch on a maybe controversial point, I think as our societies become more freer and secular and looser, we tend to lose a level of what would be considered traditional roles, or like, look, let's just say it, like people became easier, and it's problematic.
Correct,
Especially because
yes.
in Islam we don't subscribe to that sort of stuff. But look, on a lighter note, let's talk about the rise of the internet. So I
Yes,
remember, I mean,
now
dial-up, you
we're
can't
talking.
forget. I would
That
wait for
particular sound, dude, that's
like
like a classic sound. You can't beat that sound. And us, for the nostalgia, we love it. We love it as much as people don't like to know what it's entails, because you had
it was a mission,
33.6
yeah.
33.6 dial-up modems. But when you hear that sound and you knew that you were getting onto the net, if you had to have an
The
incoming call,
excitement, right?
correct?
And also the thing is, it would take a while, but that last part, it was a moment. You either it's you making it or you're not making it. You're not sure. But also there was the rise in things like MRC and I think MySpace. I remember I
Ma-
went to America in I feel like it was early 2000s, and I met this I made American friends who said, "Hey man, add me on MySpace," and I was like, "Cool, I'll do that." I didn't have friends who had MySpace at all.
Well, in South Africa, I don't think MySpace was that popular, and then that was a precursor to Facebook.
Facebook, yeah, because I joined Facebook in like '04,
Correct.
'05
Yes.
maybe.
Around, I think I did it around the same time.
Yeah.
2002, 2003, around there.
And I mean, I was
So-
in varsity then. I was 17. I still remember. It's actually depressing.
But in the beginning of the internet, it's early 90s when we were just getting it, because we got the internet in around 96, 97, around there. It's 95. That's when
Yeah.
it basically came out in South Africa. The big things were as you said, MIRC and the Islamic chat rooms.
What Islamic chat rooms? Were they
On
Islamic chat rooms?
MIRC. You don't remember it?
I mean, I don't think I was thinking I was too young.
That was Merck. That was basically what Merck was
So is
most
that what you
famous
found your
about.
wife? Is that what you're telling us?
No. That's way back in the day when you used to log on, when the internet was basically chat rooms.
Right.
That was it was famous for, right? So MIRC, one of the most popular chat rooms on MIRC was Islam.
I was a bit young for MRC. I can't lie. I mean, when we got to mix it and stuff later, I was maybe a bit more. And that also was 2000s. It's not 90s. You're
Mixit
right.
was, I think, before MIRC as well.
No. After,
If I'm not-
definitely. Mixit
No.
was in the 2000s.
No, man. Mixit was Mixit in the 2000s.
I guarantee you, my second year of university, I think I was on Mixit my entire day
then
of my
I'm
life.
mixing up stuff because MIRC was most popular for the
It
Islamic
was
chat
the
room.
chat room.
It was
in Ramadan,
Facebook and
after
everything.
Tarawih, we would all sit at MRC. It's
Because I
terrible.
can remember being on the desktops,
Yeah.
and you just sit there and you're on Islamic chat room for hours, and everybody wants to have ops,
Yeah.
which was operations.
Yes, I remember that.
Everybody wants to be ops.
Mm.
So that was the most
Yeah.
popular thing about MIRC. And then you had the WinMX was
What is that? Remind me.
WinMX was basically your peer-to-peer file sharing programs.
So it was also
similar to
Napster was
LimeWire
huge.
and Napster. Basically the same type
Look,
of a
it's
program.
we're not encouraging this because if we know it's piracy, we get it, we understand, whatever. But we all used it, so stop pretending like you didn't. Because we all sat for 9 days waiting to download one MP3, and if your connection cut and then you had to start again, then it's another 15 days. And now it's crazy. Look, we've got a few minutes left, and I wanted to touch on some of the profound, iconic films of the 90s, like The Lion King and Titanic. But I would much rather talk about technology than was now. It is. I had a moment last night where I burst out crying because I just realized I was in university nearly 20 years ago. And that kills me because it's really depressing. But if you look at technology, I didn't have a phone in the 90s. I was a child.
Yeah.
I got my first, actually, I probably did have a phone in the 90s because my first phone was a 3210.
I had a 3310 and you used to change the covers and the faces and stuff.
That is my second. You know what was my real baller moment? Everyone got a 3310, right? And I was like, listen, yeah, I am not going to play this game. Pulled out an 8310. You remember the small one with the white background?
Yeah.
Oh, I was the man for like a whole year.
And that was the thing about Nokia in those days. They had so many different styles
And beautiful
designs of phones. Nowadays, you look at our phone and they're all the same. They basically all look the same.
It's all a brick.
And
then Apple adds a button and add 10 grand to the price. It's like absolutely at this point, if the world for people still buying Apple, like you need to like go check yourself.
But the major thing from those phones to now is the versatility of them. We use these phones to shoot movies and stuff like that. And the most recent film that we recently did for the 48-hour film project was Blank Canvas.
Right.
So you can shoot because you can shoot in 4K now.
100%. But like the thing is, if you upload a 4K video to social media, it'll downgrade you to 90s technology.
Correct.
Look, we gotta wrap up and go to an ad break because our next guest is already sitting here in front of us,
way too fast,
glaring at me. But it's like you were there at the march, the Palestinian march Saturday, and you were taking photographs. Tell us, what are you currently doing? Like, what is it for? Is it for a project? Is it something?
Those photographs, I've been covering all the events for quite a while now. I think for over the last decade or so.
Right.
So what I do is I have all these photographs and I'm going to try to turn into like a feature.
Okay.
So a little short documentary of what basically has happened with Palestine.
Okay, wonderful.
So if anybody has videos or footage that they'd like to put into this little documentary, please contact me.
Give us your details. Where can I
Well,
find
they
you on
can
YouTube?
contact me on my YouTube page, which is Genazana Media. That's GENAZANA, separate word, media. And give me a shout, and let's see what footage you have and if it can be usable in the documentary. And obviously, we would send a shout out to you and put a thanks to you at the end of the documentary as well.
No money, yeah? No money. Don't even
Unfortunately, we will not be paying for the footage,
There's
but
a
we will
finder's
send
fee.
you.
You're using Al Ansar. There's a finder's fee. No, but I'm just joking. But look, brother Ismail, I mean, it's been an honest pleasure having to interview you in person for the first time, having spoken to you for years.
Jazakallah to you as well.
I love your
for
insights. I
having me
love
on.
these nostalgia, these flashbacks. We're definitely going to do this again when Zahir comes back. But for today, Jazakallah so much. I really appreciate it.
Shukr, Jazakallah for having me on, brother. I do appreciate it, man.